Hello, my exceptional students. Welcome to our biology class this week. In our class this week, we'll be looking at the topic, the nervous system. The nervous system or the nervous coordination, or we can as well say that it is the sensory system. Now, this system that we'll be looking at this week, we have the following learning objectives for our lesson. We have that at the end of this lesson, as a student, you should be able to describe the makeup of the nervous system. You should also be able to describe the structure of the brain and explain the functions of its different parts. We should also be able to identify the peripheral nervous system and describe its functions. These are our learning objectives for this week's lesson. Now let me emphasize that this lesson will not be exhaustive. That implies that this lesson will not give you all the information that you need. So as a student, I'm encouraging you to explore on this lesson. You should read, study, seek for more information. You can come to me, you can read and develop yourself into a world of self-discovery so that you can explore as much information as possible in this lesson. Now, our topic, we said that is the nervous system or the nervous coordination. And we know that in multicellular organisms that we have many systems. We have the respiratory system, we have the circulatory system, we have the muscular system, we have skeletal system, we have excretory system, and so many other systems that we have in the body. These systems that are found in multicellular organisms, all of them, they work together as a team. No system should be independent if the body is to function properly. So because of that, there is a part of a system or a part of the body that acts as a coordinator. This coordinator is in charge of all the activities of all the systems. So multicellular organisms will not be able to function properly. They won't be able to exist if all their parts are not being coordinated, if all the informations or messages that they carry are not being coordinated. So for various organisms, but their external environment which changes continuously, they must receive a message and send it for a coordinator so that the coordinator will pass that message to other parts of the organism so that a response will be effected. So this system that is responsible, that we call the coordinator, is the system we'll be looking into this week, the nervous system. Now let's go into the lesson properly. The nervous system of vertebrate consists of two major parts. We have the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Now before I go into this system, I want to enlighten you that the nervous system is made up of cells, especially when we said the multicellular organism as a whole is made up of two major cells. There are specialized cells that receive stimuli, and also there are other cells that coordinate the response of the body stimuli. Now, the cells that receive stimuli are called the sensory cells. The sensory, either we call them sensory cells or we call them receptors. These are cells that receive what? Stimuli. While we have other cells that coordinate the body, the cells that coordinate the body, we call them the neurons. Neurons, or we call them nerve cells, or the nerve cells. Now, these cells, these are the two specialized cells that receive and coordinate all the responses in the body. Now, going back into our lesson, we said that the brain is divided into, the nervous system is divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. When we talk about the central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord, while the peripheral nervous system is made up of nerves or neurons. Either you call it nerves or you call it neurons. So these are the two the two segments or the two parts of the nervous system, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Now let's look at the central nervous system. Why is it called the central nervous system? The central nervous system, as the name implies, this name is being ascribed to it because this system is located at the center of the body. We have the brain here, which is at the center, and the spinal cord, which runs at the center of the body. So because of the position of this system, of this part of the nervous system, we say that it is the central nervous system. It falls at the center. When we have the nerves, this system, the nerves are the part of the system that is found at other parts of the body. You can see the nerves at different parts of the body. These ones, they are located every other part of the body. This is the one we call the peripheral nervous system. They are found at the periphery. So, having known the two parts of this nervous system, now let's look at the central nervous system. What is the central nervous system? The central nervous system coordinates all the activities of the nervous system as a whole. The central nervous system, it coordinates all the activities of the nervous system as a whole. I have said earlier that it is made up of this and this. Now let's look at the first one, which is the brain. The brain, what are the parts of the brain and what are their functions? We'll be looking at this. Now before we go into the parts and functions of the brain, let me give you a brief intro of what the brain looks like. The brain is of about 2% of the body weight in all adult humans. And apart from that, the brain has the ability to consume about 25% of the body supply of oxygen. So it uses this oxygen to release energy during respiration. We have said earlier that the brain is located in the skull. Either we call it the skull or we call it cranium, or we can also call it the brain box. These three names, this is a casing in which the brain is found. The casing that covers the brain. It is the enclosure where brain is located. So the brain is located in the skull or cranium, and it is connected. It is connected to the various parts of the body by 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Now, whenever you hear about the cranial nerves, we are talking about the nerves of the brain. We have the cranial canal. You know that anything cranial is talking about the brain region. Remember, we have cranium, which is also the brain region. We have cranial nerves. It's still emphasizing on the brain. So we have 12 pairs of cranial nerves that connect the brain to various parts of the body. And the brain is being surrounded. The brain is being surrounded by three membranes that surround the brain. These membranes are generally called the meninges. That's the name that is being given to these membranes. And when I said that they are three, which means that we have three membranes. The first membrane, which is the outer layer of the membrane, is called the dura mater. While the second one, which is the middle membrane, is called the arachnoid. While the innermost part of the membrane is called the pia mater. These are the three membranes that surrounds the brain. Now, in between each of these membranes, just like if we have this here, we have this here, all of them, this membrane, they covers the brain. We have first one, we have second one, we have third one. They protect the brain. Three membrane. Now, these three membranes, in between each of them, we have fluid. We have a between these meninges, we have a space here. These spaces are being filled with fluid, a fluid that we call the cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid. This fluid protects the brain from shock and as well as damage by the bones of the skull. Okay, now at times the brain might also be described based on the names of the structure they develop from during the embryo stage. Now here we see the forebrain, we see the midbrain, we see the hindbrain. The forebrain is being described as prosencephalon. Why the midbrain is being described as the mesencephalon. And the hindbrain is being described as the rhobencephalon. Now these are the three ways in which these brains are being described. Now the forebrain, which is the prosencephalon, develops from the part of the embryo that becomes the cerebrum. While the midbrain develops from behind the forebrain and the hindbrain. It is found in between. It develops to a part in between the forebrain and the hindbrain, the midbrain. So it is found in between the two structures, in between this and this. So the hindbrain itself, which is the rhobencephalon, is the part behind the midbrain. It is found behind the midbrain, and even though that is found behind the midbrain, it forms the rest of the brain, where you see the pons, you will see the medulla, you will see the cerebellum. These are the different parts that you will see there. Now, let's look at these various parts as well as their functions. When we talk about the first part of the brain, which is the cerebrum. The cerebrum is responsible for maintaining some specific actions in the body. It's this part of the brain that is responsible for sight of exhibiting intelligent behaviors. You will call it the center of imaginations. It is the site for memory. It's the site for reasoning and also judgment. Now, this part of the brain is divided into two halves. If we go here, we'll see this clearly, that here the brain is divided into two halves, where we call this half lobes. It is divided into two halves, where we see the left and the right cerebral hemispheres. Now, the left one from my side here, the left one, which is this, the left one, which is this, and the right one, which is this. The left one controls the right part of the body, which means that this side controls this part of the body, while this left one controls this part of the body. That's how it works. Now, if we have this, and we know very well that the cerebrum as a whole are connected by fibers, this part of the brain, remember we said that it's divided into two. This one is divided into two. In between this and this, there is a small space, and this space is being connected by fibers that we call the corpus callosum. We have it here, the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is the fiber that keep each of the hemisphere informed of all the activities of the other. Remember I said earlier that this part of the brain, the right part of the brain, controls the left part of the brain, left part of the body, while the left part of the brain controls the right part of the body. So with the presence of corpus callosum, it will keep each of these parts informed of what this one is doing at a particular time, so that they will be completely coordinated. Now, I have said earlier that the cerebrum as a whole is the site for all voluntary actions. It controls all voluntary actions. It is concerned with correlation of impulses and coordination of every response that happens in our body. After that, we can see that at this part of the brain, there are lobes that are found there, lobes that grow out of the cerebrum that receive sensory impulses of smell. Their lobe is called the olfactory lobe. olfactory lobe, olfactory lobes, the lobe that receives the sensory impulse of smell. Now, after the cerebrum, we have the thalamus. The thalamus or thalami is a round or oval structure that is found within this region. Look at it here. Round or oval structure. It is responsible for consciousness in man. We say that this is the seat of consciousness. So it is found at the back of the forebrain. At the back of the forebrain, you see this. Now, after the thalamus, below the thalamus, you will see a structure that is called hypothalamus. Hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is just very, very small. Very, very small at this area. That's the side where you see the gland, the endocrine gland being from the pituitary gland. So that part, that small structure we can see there is the center of regulation of homeostasis. You remember that this hormone, this gland is there. So we know that many hormones are formed there. Both ADH, both the anterior gland and the posterior gland. We know the hormones that are found there as we itemized in our lesson last week. Now, having known this, we know that since homeostasis is concerned, both regulation of body temperature, water content, even human feelings like appetite, sleepiness, anger, even sex drive, all these things are within this region. They are being controlled here at the hypothalamus. So that is the part of the forebrain. Remember that we have been discussing all these parts of the brain that we have discussed, both cerebrum, the corpus callosum, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, all these are part of the forebrain. So now let's look at the midbrain. The midbrain, we remember I said earlier, is the link between the forebrain and the hindbrain. And what you can see there is that the midbrain, it consists only of optic lobes. Remember we have talked about olfactory lobe here, so we are not talking about optic lobe. What does it mean? Optic lobes that are responsible for what? For sight. So the sense of sight. If they control the sense of sight. So we can see this lobe at the midbrain. Now let's look at the second one, which is the hindbrain. The third one, sorry, which is the hindbrain. At the hindbrain, we can see some specific parts of the brain, like the cerebellum. The cerebellum coordinates muscular activities, like maintaining body equilibrium. It controls all involuntary actions, like yawning, blinking of the eyes, lids. So these involuntary actions that happens in the body is being controlled by the cerebellum, while voluntary actions are being controlled by the cerebrum. Note that. Now, after the cerebellum, we have the medulla oblongata. Now, the medulla oblongata controls many involuntary actions, especially when we talk about respiration. The medulla, it controls many involuntary actions. When we talk about respiration, digestions, heartbeat, constriction or dilation of blood vessels, those involuntary actions that happens inside the body, regulation of all those involuntary actions are being coordinated by the medulla oblongata. We have another one that is called the pons. Now, the pons is an area of the hindbrain that sits directly, you look at it, it sits directly above the medulla. We have the medulla here, while we have the pons here. Now, it sits directly above the medulla. What is the function of these pons? It helps to relay messages immediately from the forebrain to the cerebellum. It collects relay messages from here. That's the role of the pons. Now, apart from that, it also helps to play some major role when it comes to sleep and dreaming. Even when it also helps to coordinate swallowing, bladder control, the ability for you to hear, the ability for you to taste, for you to express your facial life, facial expressions, eye movement, even posture, equilibrium. All these things are being controlled by the pons. They are being controlled by the pons. So these are the different parts of the brain that known the different parts of the brain? Let's look at the second part or the second section of the central nervous system, which is the spinal cord. And the spinal cord is just a continuation of the brain. Look at this is the brain, and we have the spinal cord running through this line. Now, it's the continuation of the brain. It is found just at the neural canal of the vertebral column. We know this very well. Now, it has a small canal in the center. Within the center here, it has a small canal, and this small canal that runs here is what we call the spinal canal. The spinal canal contains cerebrospinal fluid. This fluid is being covered with meninges that supports and protects it too. So the central portion of the spinal canal is you can only see small amount of gray matter that is made up of cell bodies of neurons. You see cell bodies of spinal nerves. These spinal nerves, they move from there to the outer edges of the cord, where you see different nerve fibers. So the spinal cord connects the nerves to the brain. That's the major role. We have different nerves that move to different parts of the body. So the role of the spinal cord is to connect these nerves straight to the brain. It relays the information from these nerves to the brain straight. It's just like a high tension that collects all the light straight to the brain, to the powerhouse. So this, apart from doing that, it also coordinates some reflex actions. The spinal cord also helps to coordinate some simple reflex actions. For example, like knee jerk or blinking of the eyes, sneezing, coughing. These simple reflexes are being controlled also by the spinal cord. Okay, now having concluded on the central nervous system, let's look at the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, which we said that this nervous system is the part of the nervous system that is found at other parts of the body, or the whole body part. It is found at all the whole body part. It is made up of nerves. It is made up of neurons. So its function is just to enable the central nervous system to communicate with the whole body, so that all the central nervous system will be able to control the whole body. It will be able to communicate with the whole body. So the peripheral nervous system is just there to collect stimuli, to collect response from different sensory organs, from different parts of the body, and communicate it with the whole body. The central nervous system has about 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Remember, I said earlier that the cranium or the brain, you have about 12 pairs of cranial nerves that connects the brain to other parts of the body. Now, in the spinal nerves, we have about 31 spinal nerves which link the spinal cord to the body. So, if we are having 12 pairs of cranial nerves that connect the brain to other parts of the body, and we have 31 pairs of spinal nerves which link the spinal cord to the body. So the peripheral nervous system always passes information through all these nerves. It serves information. It is made up of all these nerves that relates information to the brain. So the 12 and the 31 pairs, they are all parts of the peripheral nervous system, because their role is to do what? To collect response and send to the brain. So the PNS is divided into two. We have the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. We have either we call it somatic nervous system, or we call this one autonomic or automatic nervous system. So these are the two parts that this PNS is being divided into. Now, when we talk about the somatic nervous system, the somatic nervous system is the part that leads from the brain. It moves from the brain. From the brain, it moves from here to straight. It moves straight from here to the spinal cord. These are the neurons that you will see immediately from the brain to the spinal cord. So this role of this particular nerve, the role of this of the somatic nerve is to control the skeletal muscles. It controls the skeletal muscles like clapping, knee jerk, running, etc. Now that's the role of the somatic nervous system. Now if we come to the automatic or autonomic nervous system, it is the one that is responsible for regulation of the body metabolic activities. The autonomic nervous system is responsible for regulation of all body metabolic activities. It is divided into two. We have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system is the one that is responsible. The sympathetic nervous system is the one that is responsible for preparing the body for emergency. It prepares the body for emergency. In this particular nervous system, it brings about the secretion of adrenaline. So through the process of dilation of the blood vessels, increase in the heartbeat, increase in blood pressure, relaxation of gut, inhibition of flow of saliva, the sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for emergency. So remember when to fight and flight. So that's the part of the brain that prepares the body for emergency. Why the parasympathetic nervous system reduces the activity of this? So what it does is to return the body to its normal position. It returns the body or animal to normalcy as soon as the danger or emergency is over. The parasympathetic nervous system will return the body to normalcy. What will happen then? Instead of constriction that happens here, what will happen here is, instead of dilation that happens here, what will happen here is constriction. Instead of decreasing heartbeat that happens here, and so instead of increasing heartbeat that happens here, decreasing heartbeat will occur. Instead of increase in blood pressure that happens here, decrease in blood pressure will occur here. Instead of increase in flow of saliva that happens here, what will happen here? Decrease will happen. So we have inhibition of flow of saliva during this stage, during emergency stage. But here you see increase in flow of saliva. So what this one does is to redo all the activities that the sympathetic nervous system have done. That's the function of the parasympathetic nervous system. It returns the body to normalcy. So these are the two types of the automatic nervous system. Having discussed what the peripheral nervous system is and what the central nervous system is and their components as well as their functions, we'll draw the lesson to a close. We'll bring the lesson to a close having done all these things. Thank you.